And so if you're reporting on those trade negotiations, you just simply report the facts. You don't have the prime minister's back.
The job of these people is
That's
to make shows.
That's an illegitimate use
like
of
puppets.
media.
Things are not looking good for Doug Ford. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got Doug Ford's polling numbers absolutely tanking with Nate Erskine-Smith running for Liberal leadership. Doesn't look like that job is all that secure anymore. We also have a Facebook group posting some slanderous crap about me, going after me. So among talking about this, there's a company that Brookfield owns. We're going to talk about all this. It's a battery company Mark Carney has conflicts of interest with that is directly benefiting from Carney's new EV plan. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we got new polling data. This is coming from Abacus Data. David Coletto posting this. Doug Ford's PCs are down 4 points, down to 44. We've got the Liberal Party up 8 points to 30. We've got regional fragmentation, Toronto, and the GTHA. Let's jump deeper into the data though. So as you just saw there, -4 and +8. That's not good for Doug Ford. We've got his party here still polling at 44% and 30% for the Liberals. You're seeing this big spike upwards. I'm thinking this has got to be because Nate Erskine-Smith announced he's going to run. I think some Liberals are excited to have him run there. His name has gotten out there over the last couple of years of being a federal Liberal and pushing back against Carney. It looks like his strategy is working to pull over those Liberals. Doug Ford is a buffoon. He's basically a Liberal. This is basically a Liberal versus a Liberal here. Breaking this down based on Ontario, Toronto, GTHA, SWO, and East. You can see the different breakdowns here. The biggest difference here you're seeing is in Toronto, 42%, over only 33% for Doug Ford. And on the flip side, in the greater Toronto Hamilton area here, you're seeing 54% for Doug Ford's PCs and only 26% for the Liberals. Now, the biggest piece of information is, well, it's the next one after this. This shows the male female. The most interesting piece out of this is 52% for the 18 to 29% for the Liberals. So the youth in Ontario provincially are polling higher, much higher for the Liberals. On the flip side, you've got 45 to 59. It's the exact opposite here, 58 to 16. Now, the most interesting piece of data is this. We've got Doug Ford approval rating 35%, down 6%, and disapproval rating is now 40% or +5. And if we look at the breakdown here, strongly approve, as in this is the highest metric for approval, and then mostly approve, which is weaker, 28%. So there's not a lot of people that fully approve of what Doug Ford is doing here. And we see that in this chart over time here. So Doug Ford was down in the 29s before, and then he climbed his way up to 48%. This is going back to September 17th, 2025 last year. And since then, he's just been tanking. And obviously what he's just done with Carney's new EV rollout and all that kind of stuff has just absolutely tanked him. I mean, look, he's down at 35% now. 40% disapproval is taking over. So his numbers are tanking. Nate Erskine-Smith came out with another video today talking about running for the leadership. Doug Ford's got his work cut out for him in Ontario. And they've got one more chart here showing net impressions, provincial party leaders. And we've got Doug Ford in blue, Stiles in yellow, and Schreiner in green. Obviously, Bonnie Crombie's not on there because she just stepped down, but old Dougie's got some polling problems. Moving ahead, we've got this from the Toronto Sun. Air Transat suspending all flights to the US as of this spring. Yeah, the ridership has been plummeting, and well, I'm guessing that's why. There's just not enough people going. They're just not going to provide the flights anymore. Got Reclamaire posting this. It's estimated Liberal government has spent $1.6 billion of Canadian taxpayer money to administer DEI policies among employees from 2015 to 2025, not factoring in hours lost to the training itself. And he said Vincent Ho here, Conservative, got the ball rolling on this in Parliament. $1.6 billion. Top DEI spending departments, National Defence. Yep. Canada Revenue Agency, Employee and Social Development, Health Canada, Public Service and Procurement. I mean, just a waste of money, guys. We've got this one from the National Post. Carney's EV plan benefits Carney, not Canadian car makers. This is what needs to be said in public. It's difficult to imagine a plan more untethered from economic realities of the real-world auto industry. Well said. To summarize, the Carney plan relies on electric vehicles that Ontario plants don't produce, a sudden and dramatic new appetite for buying EVs, and an imagined export market that doesn't exist. To top it off, the federal government will provide $2.3 billion in EV rebates that will encourage Canadians to buy cars made elsewhere, although the new Chinese imports are excluded. I've been saying it all along. This is an absolute joke. This is just a way for Mark Carney to make himself rich. So it's good to see the media companies are pushing this stuff out. What I don't understand is why Liberal voters want to enrich Carney at their own expense. I don't understand it either. At least the ones that are informed. Obviously, a bunch of people don't know what's going on, but the people who do know what's going on, they just seem to be okay with it. Like, yeah, let's have him get rich. We'll have our price of everything at the grocery store go up. So that previous story with the National Post there and Mark Carney enriching himself with the EV subsidies, ties in with this and also ties in with the next story, a bunch of people attacking me on a forum. But first, let's just look at this. This is what happened with Mark Carney's announcement. I don't think I actually read this out on the channel, but Ottawa plans to add 8,000 new electric vehicle charging ports across Canada. Mark Carney wants to double the electricity grid because you can't have all these EVs without a bigger electricity grid and all these charging stations. And I think realistically, we need, I saw someone did the math, it's like 147,000 charging ports across Canada for this to actually work. So 8,000 is not going to cut it. Now, why is Carney doing this? Well, we know this ties directly with his net zero agenda. This ties in with his carried interest. It also boosts Brookfield, but Brookfield has a company. It's number 54 on Mark Carney's conflicts of interest list. It is Clarios battery manufacturer. This is owned by CDPQ and Brookfield. They have a deal here with China Aviation Lithium Battery Tech Caleb. So this ties in directly with the next story. Next up, I wanted to highlight this Facebook group here because somebody made a post on here making false claims about me, and then there's about 300 comments attacking me on here. They want some attention. They're going to get some attention. This is a Progressive Canadians for Truth, Justice, and Democracy Facebook group. The post in question is this from Mina Soares. I'd like to address the constant whining about Brookfield. This is perpetuated by Moose on the Loose. He's a lying influencer who calls himself a journalist. So I've messaged her personally. I've also posted a comment on here telling me which video, what timestamp that I've called myself a journalist, and I'll wait for the answer. Let's see it, because I've never called myself a journalist ever. Even when I make my posts on X, I always refer to myself as not a journalist. So she goes on to babble about Brookfield and all this kind of stuff. Even within this, she made some statements here about Clarios being, I believe, a battery manufacturer based on the comments. Numerous people correcting her and saying that they don't make EV batteries, which is true. Clarios does not make EV batteries. They make traditional batteries that support the electrical systems of EV batteries. And it's funny because at the end of her post here, she says, I'm a stickler for truth and research. If I'm wrong on any of this, please let me know. But within all of this, she doesn't even criticize anything on here. And even in all these 307 comments, I went through about 100 of them before I had enough of this leftist nonsense, because most of them are personal attacks on me. People naming me by name, trying to entice people to come at me or whatever. Regardless, out of all those comments, I didn't see any saying, oh, you got something wrong here. This information is wrong. None of that. So what are they complaining about? That I've taken sources and charted them on a graph showing all these connections. Well, what's their problem? So going back to Clarios here, this is number 54 on Mark Carney's conflicts of interest. This one's a little bit complicated as it was bought by Brookfield Business Partners in 2019 for $13.2 billion. It was a massive bet cash cow on traditional auto parts because they make traditional batteries, not EV batteries. It's a lead acid ones, the 12-volt lead acid batteries that support other battery manufacturers, Varta, Optima, Delcor. They claim power in 1 in 3 cars globally, so they make those supportive batteries. So they basically bought this debt-heavy. Brookfield loaded the company with debt to fund the purchase, a classic private equity move, and they've been aggressively financing billions in loans to keep it afloat. Then they tried to IPO this and it failed. They attempted in 2021, postponed, drawn again in January 2025. So that brings in Cattle and BYD. So BYD is a Chinese car manufacturer. Cattle is that company Mark Carney visited. It's a battery manufacturer in China that he visited when he was there. They're creating a closed loop supply chain, manufacturing 12-volt auxiliary batteries themselves to eliminate the reliance on Western suppliers like Clarios. With them getting pushed out of the market here and Clarios failed their IPO, Brookfield and CDPQ bypassed the public markets to engineer massive payday through debt, while Clarios faces an existential threat in China, where domestic giants Cattle and BYD are replacing its lead acid technology with in-house lithium ion. The owners leveraged the company to raise $5 billion in new loans. Instead of investing in R&D to survive this technological shift, the funds were funneled directly to Brookfield and CDPQ for $4.5 billion dividend, effectively stripping out the cash while leaving the assets saddled with all the debt. And then that brings in this company here, China Aviation Lithium Battery Tech Calb. Brookfield, through Clarios, entered a strategic collaboration with Chinese state-linked giant Calb to access lithium-ion technology. They tried this deal in 2024-25. It fell apart, leaving Clarios without a Chinese partner and forcing them to issue a defensive legal statement confirming the agreement is null and void, and they have severed all ties to prove they didn't leak IP. And then the final result here, Clarios pivoted to Sweden, announcing a partnership in 2024 investment with Alteris, a sodium-ion technology, because the door to Chinese supply chain was shut. So that lady there posting about me, saying I'm a lying influencer who calls himself a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I've never said that. She's all about the facts. She didn't post the facts. Let's just go through a few of these comments to see the nonsense here. So he's a bottom feeder. You forgot to add Carney put his personal assets in a blind trust when he became prime minister. This is ridiculous. He obviously knows all of his assets there because we know what them are. They don't seem to understand that the blind trustee doesn't sell those assets historically. Duff Conacher said it himself. Impressively sad how many people don't realize Brookfield is a Canadian company. It's impressively sad that these people don't seem to realize that Brookfield dodges their taxes and Mark Carney was brought in to help them do that. I can debunk every single comment in this comment section. If they actually watch my videos, I don't know if they would be making these stupid comments. I mean, I'm sure some of them would be. This guy goes on a full-blown rant here. If this self-proclaimed journalist is truly certain that every Brookfield deal since Carney became PM is coordinated, illicit, and unprecedented. I mean, I've never said that stuff. What I'm saying is Carney's using Canadian taxpayer money to benefit himself through multiple ways. Carried interest, boosting the value of the company, grants, contracts. It's not like every Brookfield deal is some sort of coordinated effort. I mean, you see all the ones in America, and Brookfield does hundreds of deals, probably thousands per year. This stuff here will rot your brain. I mean, an example, one of his lies is Trump's son is getting a loan with Brookfield. This happened in 2018. Carney wasn't even working at Brookfield at the time. Just stupid BS like that. So first off, no, Trump's son, Don Trump Jr. or Eric Trump, I've never said that they're getting a loan with Brookfield. It would be Jared Kushner, which is Trump's son-in-law. And I've mentioned multiple times that Carney was not there because obviously I have that mapped on my chart here with the times. Carney joined in 2020. I know this stuff better than they do. It's absolute brain rot reading this stuff because these people are just so completely delirious. I mean, you can see one of the comments here. I also want to clear up Brookfield and Clarios. Clarios made 12-volt batteries. These are the kind of batteries that turn over the ignition in regular cars. Yeah, that's what they make, not the EV batteries. And as they mentioned, not the batteries that power EV drivetrains. And then this person said, thanks for that. Greatly appreciate it. There's a couple comments. So clearly she made a mistake in her original post. And then she's criticizing me. Going down here, there's hundreds of these comments. Some people making personal attacks. Some people trying to send them over to my personal FB page. I mean, do what you do, but there's consequences to your actions. That's all I have to say. Moose and NP are both outlets for CPC propaganda. We should have laws that stop this type of garbage reporting. Oh boy, lies getting desperate. You notice in here, they all say I'm a liar or whatever, but they have nothing to say. There's not one post in here that says something wrong on the Moose chart. They just don't want to accept facts. There are a couple comments of reason in here. Jealousy is a malignant character flaw. I wonder who is paying him to spread misinformation. He's a subsidiary of Fox News. That is not true. I'm not being paid by anyone and I'm not a part of Fox News, but thanks for some slanderous lies. Please provide evidence for your slanderous claims. It's funny, I tried to submit a comment here and they've already kicked me out of the group. I joined it and they kicked me out already. Hey Moose, you should call yourself Goose because you must have a slot of goosebumps on your head from your lies. So with all that said about cattle and Brookfield and EV batteries and all that kind of stuff, that company Cattle, number 54 in Mark Carney's conflict of interest, provides 12-volt batteries that support EV batteries. They're not the EV batteries themselves. And if Mark Carney creates a whole bunch of demand for that product, as in Canadians buying EVs, then Brookfield through that company would be able to sell more of those batteries. It's good for Brookfield's business that Carney's providing these subsidies. So once again, another direct conflict of interest for Mark Carney. Moving ahead, we've got quite the clip from conservative Rachel Thomas. Remember that clip from the media saying that they've got Carney's back because they know that he's got their back?
And Prime Minister, know that every person in this room and the 180,000 people who work in this industry have your back, just as we know that you have ours.
Rachel Thomas grilling Mark Miller in committee on this.
Canadians should be able to place their trust in the media. And in particular, you mentioned the public broadcaster, the CBC. Interestingly enough, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a media summit that was hosted in Vancouver. And at that media summit, the president of the Canadian Media Producers Association said from the stage, just before the Prime Minister took it, he said, quote, "Prime Minister, know that every person in this room and the 180,000 people who work in this industry have your back, just as we know you have ours." Minister, this is from a media organization in a room full of media folks directly to the Prime Minister saying, we have your back, just as we know you have ours. Minister, that's not the role of the media. The role of the media is not to have the back of the Prime Minister and to be able to tell the story that the government wants told. The role of the media is to be truthful in storytelling, to report the news as Canadians deserve to have it told. When a statement like this is made, it chips away at the credibility of media, and it actually distorts the trust of Canadians that you just spoke about being important. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of your statement, Ms. Thomas, is you're deeply incorrect in the premise that, first of all, the event itself took place in Ottawa. It was not members, it was in CTV, CBC. It was producers of shows And those two executives, let's just correct the record.
Let's correct the record. It was news as well.
Flawed.
In fact, the head of the CBC was one of the key speakers at this event.
What was said at the event, Ms. Thomas, from producers of shows like Heated Rivalry that was discussed at length, was that in the trade negotiations, these people that are defending Canadian content had the Prime Minister's back. It wasn't CBC or independent journalists.
Their job, with all due respect,
false.
Minister, their job is to report on those trade negotiations. And so if you're reporting on those trade negotiations, you just simply report the facts. You don't have the Prime Minister's back.
The job of these people is
That's
to make shows.
That's an illegitimate use
Like with
of
puppets.
media.
Like these are producers. They make shows. It's not, they don't, it wasn't.
Minister, you're
journalism.
misleading the committee. It was not just producers. That was part of it.
The two speakers were head of an organization that talk about media producers.
These are folks who are receiving government dollars, who are producing material that is making it out to the Canadian public. They are telling stories, and they are telling the Prime Minister, we have your back just as you have ours.
So I've already debunked what Mark Miller is trying to say here, is that, oh, they only make TV shows. On the original video, I brought up one or two different woke shows that you have on CBC where they're essentially trying to change culture. Culture changes through media. Back in the day, it would have been a wandering traveler going through towns and cities telling stories, and then it turned into the written word and books, and now it's through Netflix, it's TV shows, it's media, social media. Everything changes culture based on what people see and hear. It's no different for TV shows. You have all this woke nonsense, these woke TV shows. They're trying to change culture with that stuff. Not to mention, she mentioned this, the head of the CBC is in that room. We know what's going on here.
They are telling the Prime Minister, in the context of being under threat from U.S. content coming into Canada, that they want to protect a pillar of our cultural identity, which is Canadian content. That's all they were saying.
They tell stories.
I think you're wrong. And
their job is to tell stories. So how are they going to tell stories to protect the Prime Minister's back?
They want support financially to be able to tell stories about Canadian identity, whether it's good or bad about the Prime Minister.
But they're saying they also have the Prime Minister's back. So how are they going to have his back?
I think you're making this up. Like, I really think this is something you're looking for. Something where there is not
quote from the individual who spoke.
But you're insinuating that it's journalists that are going to spin stories positively for the Prime Minister because they quote unquote have his back. That's entirely false. These are producers of shows like The Littlest Hobo, for God's sake.
This guy talking about preserving Canadian culture, wasn't it the Liberals that said we don't have Canadian culture? There's no identifiable culture in Canada. Not to mention they're bringing in millions of people from South Asia to try to wipe out Canadian culture. This is funny. This guy here, Dave Johnson, posting this saying, fix this first. What is this? This is what Justin Trudeau repealed. This is the Justice Law website here. It says everyone who willfully publishes a statement, tale, or news that he knows is false and that causes or is likely to cause injury or mischief to the public interest is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years. And then afterwards, you can see here it was repealed by Justin Trudeau. They got rid of this so the media could lie for him. And you look at the dates here. So this is back from 2003 to 2019. Trudeau was in power for a couple of years and realized, oh, you can use the media for his power, repealed that, and off we go. Now we've seen what's happened with the mainstream media.